Minasan konnichiwa. Welcome to the Board Game Dojo's Import or Not series, where we take a look at games from Asia and let you know if they're worth your hard-earned money to import or not. Today we are taking a look at one of the most requested games we've had since it came out, Tenkamedo. I'm just kidding. I mean, it is Tenkamedo, but you know it as Rumble Nation Deluxe, a game that has been out of print for a while. And so today we are going to answer two questions. One, if you didn't get a chance to grab the original Rumble Nation, is this one worth your hard-earned money to import or not? But the second question is, if you already have a copy of Rumble Nation, is this one worth the upgrade? Because this one is double the price of the original. Let's answer those two questions today on Import or Not. This is Rumble Nation Deluxe. First, setup, give every player their own player color, and randomly place these yellow tiles all around the board in the spots marked for them. For a 3 to 4 player game, you'll also have these chips to set aside, but we're set up for a 2-player game, so we're not going to use them. You'll also randomly put tactical cards along the board for everybody to see, and that just equals the number of players plus 1. Everybody will also get dice in their color, and then you're ready to begin. On your turn, you have one of two options. Either roll the dice or use one of the cards. You can only use a card once the entire game, so choose wisely. Let's say you're going to roll the dice. You'll roll all 3 dice, and depending on what you roll, you can then choose what dice you're going to use. 2 dice are going to be used for location, and 1 dice is to be used of how many troops you put down on the board. In this case, we're going to put 1 soldier in the 4 spot. So we find the 4 spot and put down 1 person. And it's the next person's turn. Now we haven't used all of the troops, but let's just say that this is the end of the game, and let's say that yellow finished first. When a person finishes, they actually take one of these katana chips, and this will serve as the tie breaker. So now that we're done placing all of our troops, we will then start from the lowest chip, which is 2, and we will battle in each region. Combat is very simple, as it's simply how many people each player has there. Whoever has more wins. So in the 2 spot, we have yellow with 2 and red with 1. So yellow will take the chip. This is now worth 2 points. If we were playing in a 3 or 4 player game, the second place person would take half rounded down of that spot. So second place would get 1 point for the 2 spot. Now the cool part of this game is in the reinforcements, because we won this spot. So now we get to put a reinforcement troop for our side in every surrounding region, which for the 2 spot was definitely very good for us, because we will simply go to the next spot now. So now we go to the 3, and now what looked like it was going to be a tie is now won by yellow because they have a reinforcement. So now it's 3, and now it cascades again to go everywhere around the tile that is available. You'll do this for all of the regions across the board, and whoever has the most points from these tiles wins the game. And that's how you play Rumble Nation. The advanced rules are much the same, with the addition of a daimyo, which is a commander. This is something that each player will get that has a different power on their own. The advanced rules are 95% the same, except for everybody will get a daimyo, which is a commander that is on the board worth 2 power instead of 1 power of the foot soldiers, but they also come with a nice little special power. You will draw the amount of daimyo cards of players plus 1, and you will draft them, starting with the player sitting to the right of the starting player and going counterclockwise. These commanders will have various powers that'll let you explore on your own, but like the tactical cards, they can only be used once per game, so choose wisely. And that is how you play Rumble Nation Deluxe and the advanced rules. I am going to clean this all up, and then I'll show you what we think of this game. I'm a little bit shy to actually put our opinion out there, or really on top of other people's opinions, because this game has been covered by YouTube channels that are much bigger than us. It's been covered by podcasts that are much bigger than us. Even ones that don't normally cover Asian games have been doing nothing but praising this game. And guess what? I'm gonna join them because this game is absolutely fantastic. It is a troops on a map game for people that don't normally like troops on a map game. And I think a lot of it has to do with the lower barrier to entry, both in box size, rules overhead, and just time to play. Sure, it doesn't have the drafting of Blood Rage, or the in-combat decisions and bluffing of Rising Sun, or even the upgrades of Komet, but guess what? It gives me 75 to 80% of the same feeling in a quarter of the time, and that is definitely something. So let's talk more in depth about what it feels like to actually play Rumble Nation, and that's not going to be a feeling that lasts very long, as a 2-player game only takes about 15 to 20 minutes, a 3-player game 20 to 25, and a 4-player 25 to 30 minutes. So you're not going to be playing this game very long at all. And every single minute of that game is filled with tension and stress, agonizing over every little decision that you make and seeing, well, I'm going to go with this strategy this game and see if it works out. And what are you going to do? What strategy are you going to do that game? Are you going to go for the smaller point totals that are in better locations and hope that your reinforcements can win you some of those big points? Or are you seeing that everybody else is going to do that, and so you're going to hone in on those big point places? You don't need to win many of them, you just need to win some of them and outscore everybody else. Every dice roll as well is interesting because how soon are you going to try to finish out your troops? It is very important for tiebreakers later on in the game to get your troops out as fast as possible, but at the same time, you are also tipping your hand as to what strategy you are employing. On top of that, you throw in the special cards that can be used only once per game, and if you're playing with the advanced rules, which we'll talk a little bit later, the daimyo cards, that is an additional layer of, well, what is the better way to use your turn? Is it better to add troops this turn, or is it better to manage or move your troops this turn? Decisions. But at the same time, because there is a limited amount of decisions, it never really comes to the point where it feels like analysis paralysis is taking over. You only have 2 or 3 possible combinations of your dice and maybe a couple cards that you can use, so it doesn't ever bog down the game. It's a game that I usually say is like a slingshot, and that's a good way to describe it, so it's probably not an original thought. I just don't know who said it first. I'm sorry. In the first half, you're pulling back on that slingshot, and it's increasing with tension as you take aims on what area you are going to try to win this game. What area of the map are you going to try to control? And let's see how it's going to go, because after you're done with that first half, you just let go and let the cascading effects happen. You have shot your shot, and now you will see how it will turn out. It's a very addictive loop. This game is like a Lay's potato chip. When Sima-chan and I play, we never just have one. We play twice, 3 times, even 4 times in a row. A game that takes only 15 minutes for 2 players is suddenly taking an hour because you're trying out the different combinations of cards, different strategies you can employ, and seeing how the two interact. So I think it's pretty safe to assume how we feel about Rumble Nation. It is a fantastic game that we are going to recommend, but we need to answer more questions. Is it worth it for people to import if they don't already have Rumble Nation? And what about the people who already do own Rumble Nation? Is it worth it for you to upgrade? Well, let's start by answering the question of, well, is it a better version? And I would definitely say yes. This feels like the definitive version of Rumble Nation for sure. First, let's talk about the component upgrades. First, the meeples are actually meeples and not just cubes. Second, the map is bigger and a better quality. And third, the box is quite a bit bigger. I think about 1.5 times, maybe even twice the size of the original version. But maybe what is important to you is the gameplay. What the deluxe version adds is more tactical cards and the daimyos. Daimyo, or commander cards, are something that add a little bit of strategy to you and you alone, as they give you a power that only you can use. It's not something that we see in other games where it's a game-breaking ability that changes everything and how you play, but it can give you a strategy of what to employ, as some commanders are better when you put them by the ocean, or some commanders are better if you put them in the mountains. Some commanders allow you to put something surrounding them, so you definitely want to be in the center of the map. And because daimyos act as 2 power instead of 1 power, it becomes a very important timing question. When do you put them out? Because that too is going to tip your hand as to what you're going to do. The first game we were kind of refreshing ourselves, and so we didn't play with the daimyo cards, but starting the second game we started playing with them, and let me tell you, we have never stopped since. It's not something that fundamentally changes the game, which we like, but we also like the just little bit of an extra option that we have. We don't even use them every single game, but we like having the option to do it. For example, in one game I was the ocean commander who was able to move their troops across the oceans a couple of spots when usually you wouldn't be able to, and it meant that I purposely put my daimyo near the ocean, and towards the end of the game I noticed that one of the islands was uninhabited, so I was able to take that island without much trouble. Did it fundamentally change my strategy? No, but I didn't want it to. It still allowed me to play the Rumble Nation game that I love while just adding a little bit of a wrinkle, a little bit extra strategy to it. Before we get to our final conclusion, we do have to just give a caveat, and let's address the Zol in the room. Rumble Nation Deluxe, for some reason, doesn't come in English, which is something that I usually wouldn't expect from Japanese publishers, but the previous version of it came in Japanese and English, and this is supposed to be the definitive deluxe version of Rumble Nation, so you would expect them to carry it over. I really don't know why this is, and if anybody knows, put a comment down below. My guess is that maybe it's going to come out in a future print run, or maybe they've sold the English rights to somebody else. I just don't know. But you are going to need to look up translated rules for it and translations of each individual card. Now, a lot of them have good iconography that you can kind of guess what you're supposed to do, but I like to be sure and tell you that, hey, you're not going to be able to probably read, if you don't speak Japanese, the bottoms of most of the cards, so you're going to have to look them up. Now, another caveat we have to give is that I've seen it in multiple places of like some on Discords and some on BGG, that some people have tried to translate some of the cards, but note that they didn't usually include the exceptions on the cards, so make sure that you're actually reading the rules and making sure, okay, I can use this commander card at this time and I can't use it at this time. Just a pro tip. But besides that, let's get to our final conclusion, and is it worth your hard-earned money to import or not? And let's start with the people who don't already own Rumble Nation. Is it worth it for you? Well, yes, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. It is emphatic. Yes, we adore this game. We are giving it a 2 out of 3 stars because it is an essential in your collection. In fact, by the time you're watching this, it might actually be a 3-star out of 3-star. The only reason it's not 3 stars is because there's no English. And I firsthand experience watching people who maybe have the translated rules in front of them and they keep having to look back and forth on what each of the cards do multiple times, and they get slightly annoyed by it. So that's why it's not absolute essential that everybody needs to own. But if there is an English version when you're watching this, know that it is a 3-star. But for right now, it is a 2-star. It's still an essential. Don't let the fact that it doesn't come in English put you off, because there are previous versions and most of the rules are the exact same. So you'll be able to easily find translated rules for it. We love the fact that for 2 people that don't normally really like troops on a map game, we actually like this one. We keep coming back to it over and over again. Even when we weren't planning on having a game night that night, we're just like, oh, let's just do 1 game. Okay, maybe 2 games, maybe 3 games of Rumble Nation. And that is just such a good game to recommend to people. But the other question that we have is, well, if you already have Rumble Nation Original, do you need Rumble Nation Deluxe? And I think that all depends on you. If you only pull Rumble Nation off the shelf once, maybe twice a year, I don't think you need the upgrade because 95% of the game feels the exact same, and even the stuff that are different is mostly either a cosmetic upgrade or something that has 95% of the same feeling. But if you are playing Rumble Nation a bunch of times a year, or maybe you played a bunch a couple years ago and kind of got burnt out on it, and maybe the commander cards will give a nice little mix-up to your group, then I say absolutely, it is worth it. It really is a great addition of Rumble Nation. What I recommend you do is kind of do what I did, which is I sold my original copy of Rumble Nation to fund this version of Rumble Nation Deluxe. Even though it is a lot more expensive, I play Rumble Nation enough that it is worth it for me. But again, if you're only playing it once or twice a year, I don't really think you need to upgrade. Well, I hope that this video has been informative for you to figure out if Rumble Nation Deluxe is for you or not. If it was, please hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, so it would really help us out. Well, thank you so much for watching today. Arigatou gozaimashita. Until next time, じゃあね。